for that. So David, you very kindly given me permission to call you David. So we were just talking about some of the issues in Derby North, and you and I have regular catch-ups. But what kind of what kind of crime do you find is most prevalent with young people, as an example? Let's go through this.
Okay, so the what you're probably getting with that cohort of people is sort of your what we would call street crimes. So you might have things like I don't know, thefts of bikes, mopeds, that sort of thing, and occasionally you'll get assaults and drugs. It's generally disorganised, so it's not like there's a criminal network that would generally sit behind it. And I think when you're looking at how this sort of impacts on a community, you're probably looking at crimes that affect quality of life. So you've got sort of antisocial behaviour and that type of thing. But I suppose the other side of it is just perhaps looking at it from a slightly different perspective. And you've probably got a cohort of people who might find themselves out of work as a result of the COVID situation. They might have been on furlough. So you might have that, younger adult sort of cohort who are out there, and I'm linking this really to the ASB side of things, but also particularly young kids. You don't know what the family unit's like, and there's a bit of a cliche about kids, and particularly looked after kids, around what are they doing out and about, and they're either running from something or running to something. So I think when you look at, I don't think it's particularly helpful just to say what sort of crime is most prevalent with young people. It's there's a wealth of issues there, and it's not always straightforward just to say this crime type is committed by this type of individual.
And you and I have regular meetings, David, and it's really great to on our catch-ups just to find out the reality around the situation in Derby North. And I say this to you hopefully enough, but thank you for all the work that you do, because I know that it is challenging, and I also know that as you say, it is quite complex. You just mentioned ASB. I'm sure most people know what ASB stands for, but we just on that.
If I start going off on a line of duty acronym thing, you've got to stop me and pull me back and ask me what it all means.
Yeah. Oh dear. Yeah. So, but I think most people will know what that is. So that's quite interesting, really, when you talk about the different kind of crimes. But one of the things that we get asked about a lot in the from the constituency, and one of the biggest, ironically, one of the biggest thing we are in Derby North is pet lovers and thinking about animals. I've got 2 dogs. My latest is little Alan, who I adore with all my heart. Well, I adore Conan as well. But it does concern me. I know I've heard about dog thefts, and is it as bad as I may be thinking it is? And is there something that can be done about this? And how do we tackle dog theft?
So I guess the first thing is just a bit of acknowledgement around it. It's a really emotive crime, and when people have pets and dogs, they form part of the family, and there's that emotional bond with somebody. So I think when somebody is victim of a crime, I think it really resonates with that particular family, and the wider community understand the impact that this has. The bottom line of it is in that if you consider Derby North, which I think your constituency goes across a couple of my policing areas, so yeah, but your majority on what we refer to as Derby North, there've been 18 in the last year. So what I would say there is that it's very, very low, and it is not something that we come across very often. There is a little bit in that where that might be overstated, because you might have people whose dogs have perhaps run off for some reason, and in the first instance they will initially be recorded as a crime, and it may just be that we've not tracked back and adjusted that. So it isn't a huge one. When you contrast it with surrounding counties, we do far better. I know in South Yorkshire and in Leicestershire, it was a far more significant problem than what we've seen in Derby. That said, it's not something that we just sort of dismiss. We understand the impact that an animal has on somebody's family, and it is a job that's investigated by CID rather than uniform. There is the usual lines of inquiry that one would expect in any crime. Just because it's an animal that's gone, it doesn't make it any different. So the usual stuff around things like witness trust, CCTV, that sort of thing. I suppose the bit that would be really helpful is just thinking about what preventative measures you could put in place. Recent photographs. I think most dogs will probably be chipped anyway, unless they're really, really young. And I'd encourage that. And then there's that extra little bit of security around, not leaving your dog unattended in a place where it might make it easy for somebody just to seize that initiative and take it. But I absolutely, completely understand why people are concerned about it. But there's perhaps not the volume that there's made out to be.
Yeah. And I was listening to a program the other day, and actually at the end of it, I love animals, as you know, and I got tears because I was thinking, how can anybody do this to a dog? And it was talking about a dog who'd been found, who'd been used for stud, who was then rehabilitated, and the trauma that the poor dog went through was really great. So clearly we all want to make sure that we're protecting our animals, and leaving outside. I mean, it would never occur to me to leave outside a shop. Is there or a premises, but is there a safe way to do that? Because sometimes people may not have a choice.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I suppose there's just looking at where that location is, perhaps, and a lot of sort of the bigger shops where you're forced into doing that because of the makeup of the area. There's places where there'll be more people there. There'll be, cameras, security guards, that sort of thing, which just might help you with that. And, I suppose sometimes it's a difficult decision, but do you take your dog with you or not? And I know a lot of people will say, well, yeah, of course I want to take them out and I want to have a walk with them, and on my way I want to go to the shop. So I do get that, but it's just that little small things that minimize, make it you less appealing to somebody who may do that.
Yeah. I wonder if there was some kind of padlock or something you could put on the lead or something as you wrap it over. I don't know. I'm maybe overthinking this, but we'll have a think about that. I'm sort of keen to press on because I know we've only got a short time, and gosh. So we've talked about antisocial behaviour already, but I guess I'm just thinking of particularly over the city, and clearly a lot of Derby North residents go into the city. I go into the city, and we've seen there's a lot of people who are asking for money on the street. Sometimes I know people can feel intimidated by that. I also thinking in terms of antisocial behaviour, does that happen much in the city, and shoplifting, etc. So, I mean, I always feel incredibly safe when I go into the city, and I think that's the presence that I see of the officers you have there. But are there areas that maybe don't feel as safe, and is there things that you're doing?
Yeah, well, I suppose I'll cover off the city really, and it is a safe city. But as you know, there's things like there's a lot of development going on, and a lot of regeneration work that's going on there. And sometimes you can sort of understand why people, if it is a lone person walking through the city in a winter month, and you're walking past a building site as opposed to a well-lit area where shops are open, then you can sort of understand why people might feel a little bit unsafe with that. But generally speaking, it is a very safe city. There's an immense, and you might know about this, Amanda, but there's an immense amount of work done around street homeless, around begging, around antisocial behaviour in the city. And what I'd encourage anybody to do is, if you link in with the Safer Neighbourhood team Facebook pages and Twitter pages, you will find out what they've been doing on that day. They will tell you where they've been patrolling, who they've been arresting, the partners that they've been engaging with, and it gives you a real feel for the activity that's going on day to day in those areas. So and you'll know about this. We're looking in the city this week. I think it will be to get re-establish a policing presence actually in the city, which is ironically, as you know, the old Full Street police station building, which we've managed to relocate our Safer Neighbourhood team in there. It's a piece of work that's been done with a partnership, in partnership with a local authority. Without the local authority, we'd have never been able to achieve this, and also the university as well. And what we want to do is get that sort of a cross-partnership tasking process in place and be able to deal with some of the longer-term problems that we've got in the city. What I would say is I don't want to trivialise the work that's been done by the local authority with respect to things like homelessness and begging and getting people back integrated in housing, for example. I think the problem that you do have with Derby is there isn't a huge footfall sometimes through the city, so these things are magnified as a result of that. But certainly when I took up post, one of the main things I wanted to do was have a safe city centre that people could go and visit and feel welcomed and feel that they could go and explore and take advantage of. And that's still something we're working very strongly towards.
And that's really helpful to hear that. And I do have regular meetings in terms of thinking about sleepers, thinking about the issues that we have. And in fact, one of the things we're thinking about is there a way to, I know people quite often like to give some money to people in the streets. And I just wondered what your views on that. We're looking at maybe a way of alternative giving as well, because it's a difficult issue, isn't it? Your conscience makes you want to do something, but are we helping, or are we compounding the problem?
I think my advice would be, and I know it's a really difficult thing when you walk past somebody, but it would be to give to a charity, because that charity can target a whole world of support that is beyond the immediate support that you are giving by allowing somebody to, I don't know, go out and buy food immediately, because there's actually quite a lot of stuff that sort of sits behind that. Homelessness, for that, it is not just about somebody having a house. There are a lot of other problems that prevent that individual from achieving that. And what I do say with quite a high degree of confidence, there's nobody who is rough sleeping in the city that hasn't had some level of interaction with police and with local authority to try and break the cycle that they find themselves in. So yeah. I would say give to the charity, because they will enable the support that sits behind that, as opposed to the immediate problem that's in front of you.
I think that's really wise words, and I've been out with, for example, doing some vaccinations as well. And I think as a city, as you say, I think we really do try and enable people to get off the streets as much as possible. So I have noticed, I know we've had conversations throughout lockdown, and at the beginning, crime rates seemed to dip. It seemed to definitely get a lot lower, and I suppose there's lots of reasons for that. But are we where are we now in terms of crime? Is it back to where it was before? Is it a different kind of crime?
Yeah, so I suppose what you had was, as we went into COVID, our work profile changed considerably. Crime went down by about 40% at one point in the first lockdown, which was a lot. The workload that came up was reports of COVID breaches, and that became the volume that we had. As we've come out of the lockdown period, crime has gone back up, and it's probably, we've referred to it as a bounce, because we've bounced higher than where we were before.
Oh, okay.
So, and it's sort of the things, I suppose, with like dwelling burglary, for example, when people were furloughed perhaps, or in lockdown perhaps, when houses were occupied, stuff like car crime and burglary went down considerably to more or less a non-existent rate. And this, as people go back out to work and we sort of emerge out of lockdown, it is changing. There is things. There is a lot of violence about, particularly sort of around. I mean, I know it's not your area, Amanda, but the issues that we've had down in Swaddling Coat over the past couple of weeks, which have been really challenging. What you've also got is there's probably a bit of a lag on third-party reporting. So, say for example, we worked a lot with schools who may have concerns about children who were there. So when the schools aren't open, there is that lag with third-party reporting. You might have domestic abuse victims who just haven't been able to get to a phone and make a phone call because they haven't had the freedom to sort of get out of their household or get hold of the mobile phone, or they can't see beyond the household at the moment because we're in a lockdown period. And as you come out of that, more people will be able to put in calls. So it's not a surprise to us. There's a lot of hard work going on at the moment to try and sort of create a downturn around that. But I'm hoping as we go on, things will settle down a little bit.
I mean, I've got a. I mean that's really interesting. You mentioned about COVID-related reporting crimes, and I had a situation, and I guess it was I don't suppose it was a serious situation, but it's certainly something that I felt really uncomfortable. And it was around some guidelines that were being broken in terms of COVID. And this happened to me last week, and I really didn't know what to do, but I knew that we would be having a conversation. And I have reported it to the place that it happened. And I was getting into a lift to go to a particular place, and somebody got in the lift, and it was a lift for only one person. And I thought, what do I do? So I said, I'm really sorry, but this is a lift for just one person. And they refused to get out. And in fact, they leant across me, touched me, and then went towards the button, closed the door. And I was like, oh my goodness, no, you can't do that. And I opened the door again. And then they did get out, muttering words that I cannot repeat about how awful I was. But the emotions that really crossed my mind, because I know it wasn't a serious crime, but I really wasn't sure what to do. I mean, I know that clearly, I have like my lone worker and things like that, which, but also I really felt intimidated by somebody breaking the rules, but also breaking them in my presence. And my brother is in hospital at the minute with COVID, and people need to realise this is still impacting on people's lives.
Yeah, and that's exactly the point that you make. We're still in a lockdown. There are still restrictions, and they're there for good reason. And I certainly don't want to, and I'm sure I'm the same as everybody else. We want to get out of this as soon as we can. Yeah. But actually, I think as a society, we've become really, really sensitive to other people's company, because for such a long period of time, we've been very, very conscious about being in contact with people. And, we were talking the other day about whether people will continue to wear masks, even when you don't have to wear masks. And I suspect they will, because they'll be very sort of anxious about, the effects of, what they've been through in the past. I mean, all of that said, I said, generally speaking, when I look at my division on the south of the county, people have been pretty well behaved and pretty responsible around it. And there have been one or two flashpoints that we've had to deal with. And there's been one or two occasions where we felt that we've been baited by people into doing something, which is slightly infuriating. But I think that is very, very much the minority of the population here. And generally speaking, there's been a pretty decent level of understanding and compliance around it all. If you look at, I was just going to say, I dragged off the figures for fixed penalty notices. We're just short of 1,200 fixed penalty notices since COVID restrictions started. So I don't think when that was, but it was 18 months ago, something like that. Yeah, it was. So, and of that, there'll have been times when it's been really, really hectic, and there's been lots of periods of enforcement. And there'll be times, like now, I suspect we're down into single figures now per week of the number of tickets we're dishing out.
Yeah, and do you think, just talking about the non-serious crime issue, if somebody feels as though maybe a bit like I did, actually this isn't a serious crime, I don't want to waste police time with this, but actually I feel strongly enough to report this, what would they do? How would they let you know that?
So I guess you've got two choices. You've got 101, which is the non-emergency. So first off, let's go back a step. If it's an emergency, and it's an emergency, don't be shy, phone 999, because that's what it's there for. The non-emergency telephone number is 101. But there are times when our contact management centre gets overwhelmed with 101 numbers. So it can be sometimes a little bit frustrating if there's a little bit of a wait. It doesn't mean to say you're not important, but it means to say they are dealing with a high volume of calls at that moment. If you go onto derbyshirepolice.uk, there is an online reporting mechanism, and it is very, very straightforward. And if it is something that is non-urgent, your lift example there, then I'd probably suggest go online with it, because you'll get that reporting quickly. You'll have a record that you've made the report, and you won't be on the telephone having to wait if that's the case.
I think that's a really important point, actually, David. It was about, I just wanted to get it on record, because I think for me, and then not that anything else would happen, but I just felt it should go on record. So we've got Matt, who's obviously recording this for us, so we can share those numbers, like the Safer Neighbourhood number and that number as well. So we'll do that at the end of this. So just on the Safer Neighbourhood team, presumably, how many officers are there around, or maybe even just specifically as an example in Chaddeston, or how many can we expect to see on the streets of officers?
So just how we're carved up at the moment. So if you look at the Safe Neighbourhood team, so we've got Chaddeston is 1 sergeant, 4 PCs, 9 PCSOs. Allestree is a sergeant, 4 PCs, 9 PCSOs. And then the city, I put some extra cops in there last year. They're 2 sergeants, 10 PCs, 10 PCSOs. And there are other layers on top of that. So what you've got on top of that is you've got a 24/7 response team that if you dial 999, they will come out to your calls there. You've got a CID that sits behind that as well. And then, God forbid, if you get a firearms incident or something like that, you've got 24/7 firearms officers that are able to go out and respond. So there are different layers around what you've got, but I suppose your immediate interaction and your local policing is your Safer Neighbourhood teams, and that's probably your starting point.
Wow, that's and I mean, maybe it's an obvious question. What would your optimum be? Would you like to up that, or are you satisfied that we're at the right levels now?
I think I think over the last 12 months or so, we've benefited from an uplift. I think we could always do with more cops. You give me as many cops and I will find gainful employment to them. But I think there's a challenge for me as well around making sure that we provide value for money as well. And have people that are in the right place doing the right job and effectively managing the demand that's coming in. And what I have got is I've got a lot of people that you won't see. I've got a risk reduction unit that deals with knife crime. You probably won't see them. You've got a county lines team. I've got an organised crime group investigation team. I've got an office full of people that will, manage intelligence coming in. So there's all these things that happen in the background that help guide and direct the frontline cops, the ones in the uniforms that you will probably see when you're walking around the streets.
That's really useful to know, and thinking about sort of what happens behind closed doors as well. One of the things that I know has been in the news is around domestic abuse, domestic violence. Have you seen an uplift in that? Have you seen, now that we're getting towards the end, is that going down? And I guess as well, about sharing numbers, what to do in a situation like that, because I do speak to people and it's incredibly, incredibly difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is, if you look at what the problem, I say the problem area, the biggest challenge, however you want to call it, is around domestic abuse and keeping people safe in the home. And, I've just got some, in the last month on the Derby North section, we've got 186 domestic abuse related crimes. And that's over a 30-day period. So it gives you some sort of idea of the scale of problem that we've got around that. It's so difficult because you've probably got somebody who's in a household who is vulnerable, who is struggling to find that support and actually see beyond the relationship that they're in at the moment. It's majority is blokes who are doing the offending, I know you mentioned right at the very start about young people. I'll be honest with you, Amanda, young people aren't the problem. It'll be middle-aged domestic abuse offenders who's my problem. They're the ones who cause me the biggest concern. So what we would have with that is if somebody puts a call in saying there's an incident that's taken place or somebody's been assaulted in the home, it's treated as a priority offence. We will go out, we will take positive action there and then, which might mean locking somebody up based on depending on the situation that we've got. There'll be some evidence gathering, so you might find the police officers using body-worn video to take images of injuries or scenes. We will seek to, once we get that person in custody, they'll obviously be interviewed, and it may or it may not go to the CPS at the other side of it. But what we also do around it is we refer everybody through to our neighbourhood safeguarding team. So there'll be some follow-up and some support there. So, there might be something where we've got to enhance the security on an individual's home. So we might look at CCTV or panic alarms, or making sure they've got mobile phone communications, making sure that we've got up-to-date information. So if they do put a call into us, we're responding to the right place. What we will do is we will safeguard any children that are in the address, and we will do that with or without the consent of the people who live there, because there's a number of kids who will be suffering being brought up in a domestic abuse household. And there's also things like Clare's Law, where we can sort of enable people to gain access to perpetrators' domestic violence history to understand what type of individual that they're living with. So I guess there is a lot. I've got a really dedicated team that will go through all of that, and they do a really, really good service, and I've probably not given them justice belting through it like that, like I have done. There is a bit of a but on the end of this. I know that some people don't want to call the police, because once you call the police, then we will set off a train of events where we will, arrest and things like that. So there's probably some other places where you could go to. So you've got people like Derbyshire Domestic Abuse Helpline, Refuge, Elm Foundation, Derbyshire Wish. They're all places that can give a 24/7 service. So refuge.org or dvassist.org are probably two places where you might want to start with that. But what I would say to anybody with it, anybody who is suffering violence in the home or is fearful in the home, call the police, and we will do our level best to try and help you out of it. But I know that call is really, really difficult to make.
Well, I just wanted to stay on this point for a minute, David, because I think that is really important. My first question is when you get calls, does it tend to be from the person who is being abused, or is it from a neighbour, or is it from some children? Where does it go?
All of it. And actually what it won't do. So, if you are a neighbour and you fear that your friend or your next door neighbour is subject to domestic abuse, then you can put a call in, you can tell us about it, because when we know, we can start to put some measures in train that try and help that person. You might get it might be a member of the public who just sees something. There could be any number of reasons why we find ourselves in going to an address. I mean, third party reporting is also a big one as well. Some of the other partner agencies that we link in with.
And if people wanted to contact, would that be via 111, or would you say that would be a 999 situation?
It's pretty well. I suppose it depends on the circumstances, really. But if you need to speak to the police there and then, it's probably a 999 call. And if somebody is in fear of something happening, I don't expect them to be on a non-emergency call. We need the cops out there as soon as possible.
And I guess, and you rightly say, it's a really difficult situation, because when people find themselves in a domestic abuse situation, it's knowing how to get out of it without incurring more abuse as well. And I just wondered if you'd just give us a little bit more around what safety you could offer, what if there's anything that you could do if somebody is thinking about that, and also maybe just talk about, is it Annie as well, the code word in the pharmacies?
Yeah, oh yeah, very good. So well, I'll cover that at first then. So if you're able to get yourself to a pharmacy, there is an initiative called Ask Annie, where if you go in there and you mention Annie to a member of staff or ask for Annie, they know what that means, and that is a code word for I'm suffering domestic abuse and I'm in trouble. They've all had training on how to deal with this. And they will assist you. They will take you to a place of safety and assist you with whatever it is you've got. So, there's loads of excuses of why you could say you've got to go to the chemist. So that is why it's a really, really good initiative with that. But if you look at it from a policing perspective, there's cases where we might seek to charge somebody and remand them, so lock them up and get them out of the way. That doesn't happen all the time. As you can imagine, because we've got to hit a threshold for that, and we need the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, three-word acronyms again, three-letter acronyms again. But we've also got things like bail conditions. There's a thing called domestic violence prevention order, which we can place on somebody, and then we will go to court afterwards, which will put prohibitions on the perpetrator coming into contact with the victim. And then there's probably quite a few things that we could do around that, just to try and help and support. But I suppose I don't want to oversimplify our difficulties, because I get how difficult it is. There's that feeling of isolation, feeling of helplessness. Not being, there'll be all kind of abuse. There'll be financial abuse where people haven't got the means to actually go out and self-support. But I'd really, really encourage anybody who is suffering any kind of domestic abuse to pick the phone up and get in touch with us, and at least start a conversation as to how we can help you and how you can see the back of what it is you've got.
And on that, just for clarity, David, let's say somebody is a victim of domestic abuse, albeit whether it could be financial, as you say, it could be physical, it could be mental. There's lots and lots of different ways. Is there something that if they said they wanted to speak to you and they phoned you, made contact, could they say at the beginning of that conversation, I want to keep this confidential? Or would you recommend that the person that they went to, if they want some confidential advice, would be one of the numbers that you've talked about?
I think it's a really tricky one, that, because we can't sort of be told that there's a threat about somebody and then not do anything about that threat. So there is a little bit around the police acting to make sure that everybody is safe within that household. Is like I say, it's not just about husband and wife or partner and partner. There's other people in the household, perhaps like children, that we've got to make sure are safe in there. But I suppose if you are, perhaps one of the charities, if you are concerned, would be able to give you a little bit of independent advice around what you might want to do around that. Is perhaps something that if you wanted the confidence, then that might be a place to start.
Yeah, and that's really helpful, David. And I know how difficult it must be, but thank you for talking about that so sensitively. Just sort of moving on a little bit, and I guess could also be linked. But I'm just thinking about drug offences, and I'd be really interested to know what your priorities are in terms of tackling drug offences. And I know there's, is there anything such as a legal drug as well? I'd be just interested to know views on that. And also, well, let's do drugs first, then maybe come on to drink if we've got time. But views on drugs. Okay,
so first off, the way that we tackle drugs is probably not what you think it is. You might get some antisocial behaviour of kids smoking drugs in the park. That isn't the way that we are targeting the drugs. We're targeting the people who are putting the drugs in the hands of the users. Yeah. So we're upscaling, and we're trying to disrupt the supply chain as opposed to perhaps target the end user like we did in the past. When I was on the drug squad years ago, it was all end user and probably utterly ineffective. It is still a crime that we will focus on, but also it's about organised criminality. So one day it might be drugs and one day it might be something else, but it is something that we'll continue to target. It's still a problem in society. and it is generally somebody preying on somebody who's vulnerable, whether that's a drug user or whether that's somebody else. I know we've spoken at length previously about county lines, and that is the exploitation of young people in the drugs trade, and we've got a specialist team that will deal with that. So I suppose the short answer is, it continues to be a priority, just maybe not quite framed in the way that it traditionally has been.
And I think that's a really important point. I years ago, my mum used to go into rehab, but it was more alcohol and prescription drug abuse. But I used to go into some of the rehab places and see the drug users, and addicts. It's awful to have an addiction, and I think you're right. They are exploited. Somebody somewhere, in my view, makes money from this, and they make money from people suffering. And I think that's why, as you say, it needs to be really targeted at those people who are exploiting people, as opposed to maybe. I mean, I'm not condoning the use at all, because it can. I've seen the devastating effect it can have. But actually, so you're saying you do target those people, the suppliers, the generators.
Yeah, and that's if we encounter somebody who is using drugs, we will still deal with them, because it's still a criminal act, and we will take appropriate action there. But I think it's recently we've taken out some county lines and just seized phone lines, which has really affected the wider scale distribution. So instead of just safeguarding one person, we've safeguarded many people by interrupting that supply. And when we do interrupt that supply, it goes hand in hand with the offer of support to try and get people off the drugs and break the cycle. Because that's what I'm trying to do with everything. I'm trying to break the cycle of demand. Because if I don't do that, that's why we spiral and we get out of control.
No, it's a really, really difficult issue, and been around for so long. And I'm just also thinking, just moving on, just to people who've been, drunk, I guess, problems. And have you? The city isn't open quite as much as it should be, but. As it will be, I should say, in a few weeks' time. But how have alcohol-related crimes acted during the pandemic? Have they been less, and now they're cranking up again? I mean, what are you saying?
I suppose what you've got, first off, I would say that Derby City has always been a pretty safe place to go to. It's had a purple flag status, which is something that's had to be earned. And that's not to say that nothing ever happens there, because of course it does when you've got people congregating and drinking. But generally speaking, it has been a pretty safe place. What we've probably seen as we've come out of COVID is people's drinking habits have changed, and people are staying more local and drinking in local pubs. And I think this has probably separated people out a little bit more. So as a consequence, there probably aren't the flashpoints that we've probably had in the past. There will be crime, there will be cause for service, and we know that. But I suppose instead of everybody congregating in one place in the city centre, as we've had in the past, they are spread out a little bit more, which the challenge for us is, where do we put our resource? Previously, we could have put a couple of vans in the city centre and been quite happy we could effectively police it. But now, of course, it's a little bit wider out there. But yeah, it is. There will be flashpoints, there will be incidents, but it's not outrageous, and it's probably manageable.
Yeah, and we do great things in the city as well. I'm just thinking, when we get back to going out in the night economy, things like street pastas, we see those out on a Saturday night.
Yeah, there's the taxi marshals, the street pastors. We've got the place opening up in the city in Full Street, as we've mentioned, which is really, really, really good. So, and of course, I think the offer that the local authorities put on in the marketplace to try and do something different has been really good as well. So I'm hoping that's successful too.
Yeah. No, we do lots of really good things in the city. I don't want this to be all doom and gloom, because it's great. There's lots of really good things. I know, I'm just conscious we haven't got an awful lot of time left, but maybe just quickly, encampments. What procedures if an encampment occurs on public or council land? What would you do, or what could you? So
this is travellers.
Yeah.
When we're talking encampment, so there's a few things that will drop into place straight away around that. When we become aware of a site, we'll log incidents, we'll notify the site owners, we'll make an assessment of persons there, vehicles, intentions, cover off things like animal welfare, cleanliness, that sort of thing. we'll inform the local authority, and there's a team in the local authority that will put a response around that. But I guess from a policing perspective, we'd operate under the Criminal Justice and Public Order Act. And the first thing that needs to happen with that is if there's a need to move the encampment on, then the landowner needs to do that, whether it's local authority or it's private. That needs to be the first thing. And then for police to take enforcement action, there's still got to be a criteria that's met for that. So it's I suppose there's two sides of this really. The first side is you've got a group of people who are entitled to live the lifestyle that they're leading, and they are protected by law. And you know, I understand it can be an emotive subject sometimes, but that's fact, and that's how it is. And yeah, what I would hope to do is try and work with the local authority to try and find a solution to where that particular problem is. But I guess there's a wider conversation, and there'll be a load of debate about it, and it'll probably go on for a long time. But tolerance sites and tolerance locations, because I know from what we've had in the past, like on the racecourse, that the emotions can run quite high with it. But I guess what I would say is we will operate within the law around how we deal with it, and we would also work with the local authority quite extensively.
Thank you for that, David. I think we've just got one last question, and I'm just thinking maybe just think about knife crime, because you mentioned it earlier that you have a dedicated, I think it was one dedicated officer, but it might be more. It seems I don't know. I'd be interested to know, is knife crime on the way up? Is there a particular age group to it? Is it something you're seeing throughout the whole of the city?
So the knife crime actually statistically is down, but one might say some of that is probably as an effect of COVID. Sort of random knife crime attacks are extremely rare. It doesn't happen very often at all. That you've got stuff that we've put in place. There's OBSEPTA, which is a national action week, which will cover dedicated patrols, knife sweeps, intel-led visits. We've got a serious youth violence strategy that we're about to get off the ground in the city now. We've come out of COVID because that's delayed it. We'll put in referrals to things like Drop the Knife campaign. We'll do school presentations. I've got a risk reduction unit, which is a team of people who will identify areas of risk or vulnerability in the city, and they'll go and do interventions. We run a weekly knife crime tasking group, so every bit of intelligence that we get in about knife crime is actioned, whether that's enforcement or it's a visit. And we've also we've got some funds to put some bleed control cabinets in the city as well. So on the off chance that somebody does get injured, there's emergency medical items there that's they're available. But I mean, that is sort of last resort stuff really. So I know we're short of time, so I know I'm rattling through it a little.
No, you're not at all. I mean, just on that is I mean, it sounds like there's some really good things that have been done. Why do people carry knives though? Who is it who's carrying knives, and why?
It's there's a world of reasons why people do it, and there's things like, some people will feel vulnerable and they feel that they've got to carry a knife. Some will be bravado because they think it's something to talk about and it makes them a stronger person around it. Some will be to commit crime, some will be fear of crime. So there's a whole load of reasons behind it. And I suppose the worrying thing for me is you've got when people are carrying knives, it's a deadly weapon that somebody's got immediate access to. So if you were to go back 20 years and there was a flashpoint, there might be a fight and there might be, punches exchanged. But generally speaking, parties would dust themselves off and go off in their opposite direction. I think the worrying thing is when people carry a knife and there's no cool down period, and they've got something that's very dangerous immediately accessible to them. So that's why it's really important. And, I say this towards, anybody who's a parent, if they get some, indication that their, children are carrying knives, or they know people who are carrying knives, then please, if the school kids tell the school, if if they're going out with it, tell the police. We will go and do something about that. And there's lots of stuff around things. You know, it's not just all about enforcement. There's education that we can do as well to try and stop it. But yeah, it's there's lots of different reasons. But you know, I can't stress enough. Do not carry knives about. It is, you know, it's not worth the consequences. And I've spent some time working on the homicide unit, and you know, when you see it firsthand, you realise just how devastating it can be. Gosh.
Oh, I can't imagine it. It must be, yeah, it's very, very sad, and you know, it's sad that people feel as though they have to carry knives. But I know, as you say, you do great work around that. But I guess, is it a rising problem, do you think, or is it a diminishing problem? The
statistic is it has reduced. So I suppose the challenge for us is to try and keep on top of that reduction. And make sure we drive the good work down. You know, our force lead for it is somebody who works at Derby, who I work very closely with, who's Superintendent Sarah McCautry. And you know, she puts a hell of a lot of work into trying to reduce the risk of knife crime. I guess the caution around it is as it reduced because of something that we've done, which is great, or has it reduced because of COVID? In which case we shouldn't be complacent.
Well, look, David, I can't thank you enough. It's always a pleasure, and I know we have our regular catch-ups, and I really appreciate you answering these questions. They're regular questions that we do get from the constituents, and I think it's really important. And thank you for your candour in answering all of the questions. But more importantly, just to say thank you for all you do and all that your colleagues do as well, because Derby is a great place to live, and you know, there's lots of fantastic things. So sincerely, thank you very much for all you do and all your colleagues do.
Well, thank you very much, Amanda. I really appreciate that. But just for me to come back, thank you for your support, and it's really nice to speak to you. But what I would say is, if people knew the team I've got around me and their dedication and how committed they were to making Derby safe. You know, I'm really proud of them, and I really appreciate their help and support. So it's nice to have that team to help me have these conversations with you.
Yeah, and I know a lot of those team, and I just absolutely concur with everything you're saying. They are brilliant, but you're brilliant as well. So thank you so much. Really do appreciate it. And maybe we could do this again in a few months' time. It'd be really helpful if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Dead up for that. And you know, I hope, and anybody who's listening to this, I hope I've helped. And you know, if there's something I've missed off, then you know, by all means, flag it up, Amanda, and I can pick it up at a later date. No problem.
We are in regular correspondence. but
yeah, I know.
Have a conversation. Thanks again, David. Really appreciate it. Take care.
Okay, take care. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Thanks.